Hey guys, so today we went on a live stream to show you some of the new updates in Nowa during July. But due to some technical problems, some parts of the live stream were lagging, so we decided to release this video to actually make it up for those parts. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna show you the new way of displaying data using Listview, and also how we can use the API with WordPress, for example, to display some blocks in our app. So if you remember, the older way to display data, where if you drag an instance like of the placeholder and create multiple instances, and you select all of them, and then you group them, and then you make them as a column, and then you connect the children to a list. Now, the problem here was that, first of all, you need to add a scroll view to make it scrollable. The second thing was, this is not an efficient way to display data, because if your list contains a lot of items, the app might have some performance issues because it will try to render all the items at once. Now, the new way of doing that is by using the new widget, which is the Listview. So the Listview has two modes. There's a normal mode and there's a builder mode. Now, the builder mode, which is what's make the Listview really special, is that it renders only the parts that need to be displayed immediately. So if the screen, there's an area to display 5 items, it will render 5 items only, even if you have a list of 100 items. And then when the user scrolls, the list will dynamically render the rest of the items that's only need to render to display, which make it really efficient if you connect it to a large set of data. Now, the builder Listview is used when you want to connect the list to a variable. For example, if you have a local variable, or if you're actually bringing some value from an API or from Firebase or from any backend. The normal Listview is literally just to display widgets in a layout that is scrollable. So in the normal list, I can add some items, and let's say I want the first item to be an image, the second item to be the text. So I'm literally just building a layout where I can put group of widgets in a column. So it's literally like group, the older way to which we have it already here. But the difference is this one comes with scroll. But with the builder, it's actually really different. Now, if I click on a builder, of course, the builder takes one item only as a placeholder. So if you went to the normal and you want to switch back to the builder, it will only keep the first item and it will delete the rest, because the builder needs only one widget and it will use that widget as a placeholder for all the items of the list that you will connect it to. So I'm gonna actually just remove the whole Listview and let's start from scratch. So I'm gonna drop an up bar first, and I will make the screen a column. So when I drop the Listview, I have an extra option in the layout to actually make it expand. And then I can actually, if the screen, now it's responsive, so if the width increase or the height increase, the Listview will resize itself to expand to get all the empty space. Okay, so now what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna play a little bit with the options of the Listview. So here, for example, I can play, for me, I like to customize the layout until I really like it, and then I actually connect it to a data. Now, you can do the opposite, you can connect it to a data first, but for me, I like to play with the UI first until I like it. So here, since I'm not yet didn't still connect the Listview to a data, the item count, I can actually put the item count I want. So I want to see how the list will look like when there is 7 items. I can just put 7 and then I will see how it look like. If we play, we can see that it scrolls and it's all good. So now I want to start customizing it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to choose the placeholder. So I don't want this basic ugly placeholder. I actually want this one, the one that I created before, which is just an image with a text, which is a title, and a description. And I group all of this in a component, and I called it a blog cart. So here I will choose this blog cart as a component. And the first thing you notice that it needs some space. So I can come to the separator and choose fixed spacing. And then I can here increase the space, or I can put some fixed value, or I can even come to the space here and actually just increase it. So I'm going to choose this one. You can also choose a widget as a separator. And for example, here I have a divider now as a separator. And when I click on the brush, I can actually go inside and customize it. So I can increase the height, I can increase the thickness, for example, I can change the color, but this is ugly, so I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do is going to come back again and choose a fixed space. And it's 20, which is, I will say I will make it a little bit less. Let's say I'm going to make it 7 or 10. Okay, that's good. And I can then, for example, reverse it. So I'm going to make it start from the bottom, but I don't need that. I can also add some padding. I want some padding, let's say, only on the left and the right. I don't need any padding on the top and the bottom. So let's see how it looks like. Okay, nice. So now I'm happy with how the list view looks like. Now it's time to connect it to a list. So before we even think about the API and the using a backend, I will actually start by if you have a local data. So let's say I want to display a list of books. Okay? So the best way to do it is to create an object first called book item, for example. Now I think I already created this before. Yes, called book item. So you can simply click on the plus here inside the files and choose new object. And then you can create a new object that will act as an envelope that will hold data about specific thing. So here I already created the book item, or I'm going to close all the tabs. So let's click on the book item and go to the outline. So I created already an object called book item, which intended to hold information about a single book. And here I have 4 parameters inside this object: the name of the book, the author of the book, the description, and an image. Now, I don't actually have a place for the author, so actually I'm just going to remove the author for now, but it's all work the same. So I have a name, I have a description. I'm going to write description as a default value. So the default value will be used when you pass the object, when you use the object. So if I keep it empty and I connect the object to the UI, I will see an empty text. I don't want that. I actually want to have a default value at least. So I'm going to just keep the default value the same as the parameter name. It's just my pick. So an image, okay, I don't have an image here, so I need to pick an image. I will choose the image here. I'm going to take the URL. And notice that the types here are string. And even the image, because I also need a string here because I'm passing a URL only. Because I don't want to have the image to be stored locally, so I'm going to put an URL. Okay, now we're all set. The next thing is, where are you going to display those data? It will be inside the blog cart. So the optimal way to do it is that I pass an object called book item to the cart, and the cart itself will extract the title, the image, the description from the cart. Now, for this to happen, I need to create a parameter inside that component. I'm going to call it book param. And the type of the parameter will be book item. So now I'm saying that if I want to use this component, I need to give it an object of type book item. And I need to pass that object using the parameter that's called book param. And then what I'm going to do next, I'm going to make the widget extract the title, the image from the object that I will pass to. And later, I need only to pass an object of type book item to every instance here in the list view, and every instance will know how to use that object to show the data. So let's actually go into action. So I have now created the parameter inside the component. I then need to pass, okay, the things I need to change here are, let's start with the title. So I'm gonna pick the title, and I want the text property here to be taken from the parameter that I'm gonna pass. So if I come to the locals and I choose book param and I choose name, and now I'm gonna see the default value, which is name. So now I'm passing the name from the name property from the object to the name, to the text property of the text widget here. I'm gonna do the same thing for the description, and a book item, description, and I'm gonna do the same thing for the image. So now, because you created the parameter inside the widget book card, the parameter is inside locals, because the parameter you created is a local parameter that's only accessible for that component, because you created it inside that component. But for something else called the global state, you can create an object that you can use in all the screens, and that will be under globals. But we don't need that right now, so let's stay for locals. We click on the book param and choose an image. Okay, so now what's gonna happen? If I'm passing here, let's say an object, if I say here like book number 1, so what's happening here, I'm passing an object of book param, and I'm having a different name than the default one. So when I pass that to the component will extract the name and display it in the title. The same thing for the description and the image. But for now, I don't need that, so I can remove the object and it will take the default one. This is only because it's on the board, I'm only passing an object just to see how it's look like. But realistically, I'm gonna pass an object that I'm gonna get from the Listview. So now actually you can do something else. And instead of creating a book param, you can just create a parameter for the name. Like I can create here a param called name, for example, and image and URL, and literally just go here and connect the name to the parameter. But to be more, I would say to make it more kind of easier to deal with, it's good to wrap what you need in an object, because the name, the description, and the image actually belongs to a single book information. So it's a good practice to actually create an object to grab the name, image, and the URL inside that object. So to make it easier to deal with, I'm actually just gonna keep the book param, but if you want something quick, you can just create 3 parameters here for the title, the image, and description, and then use them inside. Okay, so now after we created the book item and we created the parameter here, the next step is to create a list inside the home screen. And here I can create a variable, which is a list of book items, and then pass it to the Listview. So a question is, what is the difference between a variable and a parameter? So a parameter is a variable, but it's actually, when you create it like for the component, you can pass that data from outside. So if I create a parameter here called book param, I can pass this book param from outside the widget or outside the component or outside the screen to it. And then it can use the information inside that parameter to render some stuff. Now the variable presents the state. The variable is not something I can pass from outside. It's something that starts inside the widget and it can change. So the parameter, let's say I'm getting here a book parameter when I use this component. I cannot later change it because I just got it from outside to use it inside the component. But let's say I created a variable that holds a state, let's say, about if I want to save this blog to my favorite. Now, that one is a variable. Like I can, during the runtime, I can change it and it can update the UI and I don't need to get it from somewhere else. So mainly that's a difference. Parameter is something that you pass from outside to the widget, and the widget uses the information to render some stuff. The variable is not passed from outside, and it presents the state of the widget, and you can change it and you can update the UI during that. So now let's actually create a variable here. I can create it as a param as well, but I'm just going to create it as a variable called list of books, and then the type will be a book item as a list. So now I have a list of books, and let's say I'm passing like 4 books. So now I have 4 objects of type book item inside the list, and each one of them actually have the default value. So I can just change it like, okay, book 1, book 2. I can just change something like quickly because you can pass the information you want here, but I'm gonna just make it quick. And book 4, for example, and I will also pass an image here. Okay, so now I just pasted some links from some covers to the book so I can display in the list view. So I have a list now. Now, the next step is to connect the list here inside the list view to the variable I created. So the variable I created is inside locals. And when I connect it, I can see 4 items because the list I created has 4 items. But the problem is I cannot see the details of the book. This is because I need to still specify how the list need to pass the data from the list to the component, which means, so if I select the component here, the placeholder under the list view, which is a placeholder, okay, you can go to this placeholder by 3 ways. You can select it, you can choose the outline, like click on the outline and choose it on the left side, and you can also from the variables of the list itself, you can go to the item builder and click on the brush. So now I am inside the placeholder of the list. And now, as we explained before, I need to pass a book param to the list. And this book param will be a single item from the list I created for the screen. And because the widget, this one, falls under the list view, and the list view is connected to a list, I will see an extra variable inside locals called element. So the element here is simply the item that the list view passing it to that specific placeholder inside the list widget. And the element here, which is a single item from the list, is from the type book item. And the parameter here, the book param, is also from the type book item. So here what I'm doing is I am saying to the list view, please pass the element, which is a single item from the list, to the parameter of the component. And then the parameter itself will know how to use the information inside the element, which is like how to extract the title and those information. So now I'm just passing the element to it, and then from the parameter here, the component knows how to extract the details. And that's it. Now I have a list of books, and also I'm displaying the images. Now let's go for the API. Let's see how we can do the same thing, but using WordPress API. Okay, now we saw how to display the list, but now let's see how to actually connect that to an API. So I actually created a WordPress, a blog on the WordPress itself, and it has 4 articles. I want to display those 4 articles inside the app. So let's see how to do that. So the blog I created called Nowa blog app, and here, for example, I have some random articles inside. Now let's actually go to the WordPress API reference to see how to use their own API. And if you click on posts, I can tell you how to grab, like how the schema of the post will be and how you can actually use the API efficiently. So here it said that if you want to get a list of posts, you need to go to this route. And here an example that says that you need to go to the URL, and then at the end you go until you get to posts. Now the thing is, because I'm hosting my WordPress blog on WordPress site itself, there's a different type of getting to the API. So as WordPress say, if you host your WordPress on your own domain, on your own hosting, I mean, you can actually use this endpoint to get the data. But because I'm using WordPress itself, there's a different endpoint. I need to go to public API.wordpress.com, and then slash sites until I get put my site here, and then I put posts. So this one is equivalent to that one. But since I'm hosting it on WordPress, I need to follow this one. So let me actually create an API request. And then I'm going to create a collection called WordPress. And here I'm going to paste the base URL, and I'm going to get the post out of here, because the posts is actually a specific request. So here I'm going to have the base URL inside the collection. So any request I create below this collection will get the same base URL. And here I'm going to call the request get all posts. And now here I will see the same base URL, but I need to put slash posts. So if I click on run the test, it will actually just fire the request, and now I can see all the data. So I can see I have 4 articles, and there's an ID for every article. I can also see here a short summary of the article. I can also here get the image, and inside content, where is it? Oh, okay, the title, I can see here the title, and the content, I can see it here. And notice that the title has an object, and the object has like a key called rendered, and this is the which is no introduction is the actually the title itself. So you need to know the schema of the response so you can use it inside Nowa. So now I got the API. So now I want to use that here. So you have to ask yourself, what is the parts on your screen that need to access the data from the API? And then you need to put a wrapper called data builder above all of those widgets, because the data builder what's going to do is going to pass the result from the API to all the widgets that comes underneath it in the tree. So here I only need to use the data in the list view. So the best way is to put the wrapper exactly above the list view. So any widget that comes underneath the list view and the list view itself will access the data builder and the data from the API, but anything outside that widget will not see the data coming from the API. So if you have like a text widget somewhere else that needs to get the data from the API, you need to put the data builder above all of them. So now I'm gonna put the data builder above the list view. And don't worry about this one, but it's just because you did not provide a source yet. So the source of the data builder is the API request, and the request itself is get all posts. Now, after I did this, I will find that there's an extra variable inside locals called data, and this is coming from the API. So the data is the result from the GET request we created that gets all the posts. So if I choose the data, now I'm getting the data. So what happened here? Here, because I am actually the items that's passed to inside the list view here is the element of like a single element from the list from inside the data. But this actually is not from the type book item, because I'm getting it from the API. It has a different schema. The schema for the item inside the list is like that. So it's an ID, date, guide. So it's different from the book item. That's why it crashed here. So actually, I'm not gonna pass the item as it is from the list view to the component. I'm gonna do something else. The name of the object. Now I'm gonna pass an object to the param, but I'm gonna change the name and the description and the image. So the name, I'm gonna get the name from element. An element is the single item passed from the list view, which presents a single blog inside the API. So when I choose the element, I can go and choose a title, and from the title, there's something called rendered. So now I'm passing the title. So what happened here? Here is I'm passing an object called book item to the component, and the component knows how to extract it. But I need to do some mapping, because the list is not just a list of book item, it's a list from the API with a different schema. So I need to map like what is the name of the inside the object, what it should be. It should be the item that's called title inside the API, and the description is the same thing. I need to get to the element and then choose this one, because this one gets the summary, and I'm going to do the same thing for the image. I'm going to get to the element and then choose the image here. So now I'm passing an object from book param to every component, but I'm filling the name and description of the image from the object I'm getting from the API. Now another thing I can do here is I can simply, as I said before, you don't need to create a parameter of the book param. You can simply create an image, and then you can create like a title, and you can simply just from the list here, you can pass the image and the title to be like the element dot title or the element dot featured media. But because I'm already created the object to the book, I can also do it this way. So you can do it both ways. It's very flexible. You can do the structure that you find that's good. But for now, I'm going to keep it the same. So I'm going to remove those two items. And now I'm displaying the data. Amazing. And now let's now do something really quickly. So I'm going to create another screen called blog detail. Blog detail. And inside blog detail, I'm going to add an up bar, and I'm going to make it a column. I'm going to make an image, and I'm going to drop an HTML widget. And for the image, I'm going to resize it, and I'm going to expand the HTML. Okay, so now I need, when I click on an article, I need to open it in another screen. So here, to display the data, I need two things. I need the image URL, and I need the content of the blog. So I create two parameters, one called image URL, and again, it's a param because I need to pass it to this screen from outside, and I need to create content, which will be an HTML. So both will be string. And I can also use the image here to make it the default value, and content, I'm going to write content. And then I can go to the detail here and connect the image to the image URL and connect the HTML to the locals to the content. So now the HTML gets the information from the parameter, and the image gets the image URL from the parameter. But now I need to fill the parameter from the information from the title. So here I want the user to click on the single component. So I need to add a wrapper called gesture detector. And be aware, I'm adding it not in the component itself. I'm adding it above the placeholder in the Listview, because maybe I need this component to behave differently in another place, but I need the property to go to this screen only in that specific place. So this is why I'm actually wrapping the gesture detector above the placeholder inside the Listview, not on the component itself. So now I did that, and now I can add a function on tap. So this function will be executed when I'm tapping on the item. And I simply need to navigate. And I need to navigate to blog detail. And here it will ask me for the parameter. It will ask me, like, okay, pass the image and pass the content. And the content and the image, I'm getting it from the data, is actually inside, again, the element. So because the gesture detector goes on a specific card inside the Listview, it can access the element. So anything that is below the Listview have an extra variable called element, which present the item that was passed to that specific widget from the Listview. So every card here gets a different element, because every card here gets a different blog. But the element on everyone presents the blog that that widget received. So here I'm going to use the element. I'm going to extract the content, and inside the content I need to use this rendered and connect it to the content. Now, why I am actually doing it this way, because in the API itself, this is how the schema is like. So it's not like our decision. if you see the content, there is rendered, and then there's a content. So you have to just follow the schema. So again, I'm gonna go and do the same thing for the image. So I'm gonna click on element, and then we're gonna click on the featured image and connect it to the image. That's it. So now if I play and I click, I can literally just preview the information here. Okay, now let's do something really, really quick. So let's say you want to fire a request on a like dynamically on using the ID of the post. So here I'm getting the ID of the post, right? But let's say I'm going to use it to fire another request here. I don't want to use the parameter, so I need to detach this one from here. I need to detach this one from here. Okay, so I want to create another API request, get post. And this will be for a single post. And here, I need to pass the post ID here. But this one will change. So I need to create a parameter called post ID. And this will be an integer. This is how it works in the API of the WordPress. Like if you go to the reference, here you can see that to retrieve a specific post, you need to pass the ID to the post. Okay, going back again. So I have the post, and I can actually here create local. I create post ID, and here I can pass like a default value just in case, just for testing. And now I can literally make this one dynamic. So the post ID will depend on the value I'm passing here. Okay, and let's just see one of the responses here. So this article, the ID for it is 9. So if I'm here and I'm having 9 here, if I run a test, it will bring me the details of the post of the ID 9. Amazing, that's all what we need. Going back to the screen. So here, since I'm also need to fire a request on that screen, I need to use, again, the data builder. And I need it to be above the image and above the content. But it has to be below the screen. So if you wrap the full screen with the data builder, just reorder it to make it below the screen. So in this case, the screen will be still on the top level. So now I can choose an API request, and I can choose get post, which is what I created. And here I can see post ID. So here I can pass the post ID I want. Now I can create a parameter here. So I don't need the image, and I don't need the content anymore. But I can just create a parameter called post ID. And this will be an integer, as we said. And then inside here, I'm gonna connect the post ID parameter for the data builder to the parameter I just created. That's it. So now I need only to pass the post ID, and the screen will load the content. So last step is to go to the details panel here, and yes, I don't need to pass the because we changed the parameter, so I don't need. I need to delete and again add the navigate, and I need to choose the screen now, which is blog detail, and it needs the post ID. So if I go to the element and get the post ID from here, or ID, and connect it, so now what happened is from the post here, from the element, which is this one, I'm getting the ID, and I'm passing it to the other request to be here, and then I can get all the details. And then here, I can get, like in the other screen, I can see the local variable called data, which will come from the API I'm going to fire for that specific article. And I can get the image, which is have the same name, which is this one. And I can here also get the content from the data. So data, content, and then I need to get the rendered. Now it's crashed because there's no item passed. I need to set default values for it, but to see it on the UI. But now I know that if I use it in the app, I will actually see the real data. So if I click on an article, you can see the loading. It got the post ID, and it fired another request, and it loaded the information of the rest. Now I can see that it's not scrollable, so I can actually add a scroll wrapper to it, to the screen itself. So I can select the screen and add scroll view, and then I can just put the scroll view under the screen, and that's it. If I click on the screen, it loads, I see the image, I see the content, and also I can scroll. So that was a part for how to get the information. For the next video, we're going to see how we can post an article on WordPress using the API.